Hello, I'm Elaine Sanchez, founder of Caregiver Help, and with me today is Dr. Joseph Casciani, geropsychologist and the founder of Living to 100 Club. And his podcast is just absolutely fabulous. I encourage you to tune in. He has such interesting guests, and I'm grateful that you're my guest today, Dr. Casciani. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Elaine. I have a plane flying overhead, so we get a little
I,
background sound. Yeah, I enjoy these conversations. As you can tell, I really like to give individuals ideas about opening new doors.
yes.
And with all the challenges, with all the stresses, with all the events that come into our lives, I think we always need to look at what's next. And certainly being a caregiver and moving on from the loss of a spouse or maybe a child, adult child, or a young child,
Mhm.
or any kind of close family member is stressful, of course. And how do we deal with that? What are the emotions? We have a lot
Yes,
of emotions that come into play. So, yeah,
we
good
do.
conversation. Yeah.
Yes, yes, it is. And I know you really help people with transitions and look at transitions as we age as positive things. And I think that's a very good thing is rather than looking at everything that changes as a loss,
Yeah.
at looking at it as an opportunity to create a new path forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that a lot. So one of the things that I have noticed that my friends and our caregivers in our groups have talked about, one of the hardest things for them to deal with is the quiet.
Yeah.
After a spouse dies, and even if they have been non-communicative, there was always something going on. There's always some kind of conversation,
Mhm.
whether you are feeding them or bathing them or, you have people coming in to take care of them. There's always something going on in a house
Yeah.
where somebody is being cared for, right?
Yeah.
So they die, and then all of a sudden, your routine, your schedule that you had is you aren't needed like
Mhm.
that any longer. So, the routine that you had for medication, for food, for bathing, for all of these things is gone. And now the house is quiet.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's one of the hardest things for people to adjust to. So let's talk about how you kind of get used to that, how you
Mhm.
fill that quiet, empty
Sure.
space, and then how you go forward.
Well, doing all of those different activities and caregiving responsibilities and one task after another, that keeps us busy. And,
Yeah.
there's still some quiet times when we maybe can look at how I felt today, but when those activities end,
Hmm.
then we're just, I won't say forced, that's too strong, but we're left with quiet time.
Hmm.
No more
Hmm.
tasks, no more responsibility, no more call bell, uh, no more schedules, no more meals. And that means we have to stop and wrestle with whatever we're feeling. And,
Hmm.
some people try to stay busy and do something else instead of, reflecting. But I think that reflection is so important. It's that time to stop and say, wow, what have I been through? What have I been going through? How have I managed all of this for all
Hmm.
this time? That's a golden opportunity to recover from the burden that we were carrying. It's the time we respect ourselves, we honor that time, and we can stop and feel and go in all those different directions that our, emotions take us. But I think it's a bonus.
Hmm.
Some people might say, "Well, that's weird." Well, I think it's something that we have to take advantage of and not run from. some of those feelings are very unpleasant. We want to escape. We want to
Mhm.
go out and do things or get on the phone or watch TV or do something.
Mhm.
Well, okay, but when we stop, let's pay attention to what we've just experienced, and let's respect those feelings. I've said that a couple times in these
Yeah.
conversations. Feelings are very powerful, and we need to stop and pay attention. They're just, normal human reactions, whatever those chemistries are
Mhm.
going on in our body. We have to stop and pay attention to it. It doesn't mean we're going to get controlled by them or swallowed up by them,
Mhm.
but the task is not to avoid them. The responsibility is to pay attention to them. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the healing comes in. That's where we can start to move forward. Not that that's next or not that immediate, but
Mhm.
we have to go through we have to go through these emotions before we can recover. And the quiet times, I think it's good. It's good to have that. It's a real plus that we can, be free of all those external responsibilities and now say, okay, what's going on with me? That's my take. Yeah.
I like that a lot, and
Yeah.
I think that is not a common response.
No.
I think when it's quiet and people lose that sense of purpose or,
Mhm.
that routine, to sit and say, okay, now I have the time and I have the space to really think about this and process it. I think that has to be an intentional thing. And I don't know that it's something that we would normally think about.
Yeah.
We would, I think, I'm just thinking for myself.
Hmm.
That's a new thought, and I like it, that okay, this is a difficult time. I have difficult emotions. I need to stop and think about these and embrace this time to process it, to move through it, to
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. That's why, people might go into psychotherapy to help with this,
Mm-hmm.
bereavement or grief
Mm-hmm.
resolution,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. That's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a model that allows us to stop and slow down and say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I've been flooded with so much. I need
Mm-hmm.
to work through this. I need to process it so I
Mm-hmm.
can get on with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, wherever it happens, but it's not going to come from going out with friends necessarily. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
That's got a different purpose. But
Mm-hmm.
if we constantly stay active and don't allow those feelings to surface, we're doing a disservice to ourselves.
So when these feelings come up,
Yeah,
give us some tools for dealing with them.
yeah,
When this comes up and you're reflecting back on all of these years and you're reflecting on, maybe the anger and the guilt and,
mhm,
the resentment or, whatever it is, the sadness, the loneliness,
mhm.
how do you process this?
Yeah. I think the best way is to journal, to
Yeah.
write these feelings down
Yeah.
and talk about how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What are all the different shapes and sizes and
Mm-hmm.
colors of this feeling? And
Mm-hmm.
not just to record it, but I think to talk about how I'm dealing with it, how
Mm-hmm.
how it's how it's affecting me, and how I can recover, how I can move beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, that's the value of journaling. We
Mm-hmm.
stop and reflect, but also what's next? How am I going to deal with this anger? And yeah, we write down what we felt or remember a particular day or a particular
Mm-hmm.
argument or particular incident, and we write it down and all the feelings that we were going through. That's very powerful. So I think that's the best way,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
explore it and from all different perspectives.
And it provides clarity, doesn't it? Because you can
Yeah.
go back and you can read it and see
Yeah.
what the stages were
Yeah.
and how you've processed it. And then um, once you do that, now do you have any kind of an idea of how, I know that there's no timeline. I mean, you
Mm,
don't start grief at point A and end up
mm,
at point B,
yeah.
on any kind of a timeline. But it seems to me that this would help you kind of understand the process a little
Yeah.
more clearly so that
Yeah.
you can move with it or through it.
Yeah. Well, it is a process, but
Uh-huh.
it's very therapeutic
Uh-huh.
to write it down
Yes.
because it's different from just thinking about it.
Yes.
Thinking is close, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
close enough.
Mm-hmm.
And writing it out makes it real,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of brings it right into, right it up close and personal. It's the words on the paper that can be so transforming.
Mm-hmm.
And you're
Mm-hmm.
right, we can go back to it and read it and process it. I think we would see, after doing this with some sincerity
Mm-hmm.
and dedication, we'll see the words change. We would see the
Yes.
words start to lighten. We'll see the feelings starting to soften, and the edges will start to smooth out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we're going to stay there forever. It is a process and it evolves. And I think the more we can do that religiously, for maybe a month or more, and we'll see how it starts to kind of lighten, or I won't say evaporate, but
Yeah.
it will lighten. I mean, that's the benefit of the, it happens. It's an just a flowing, it's a uncovering and releasing this. And once it's out, it doesn't have that power anymore.
I really am reflecting right now on the letters that my mother wrote to me.
Mm,
She wrote for 6.5 years as she
yeah.
cared for my dad. She wrote about everything that was happening and exactly how she felt about it.
Mm.
And I think her letters to me were like a journal.
Uh-huh.
Because
Yeah.
about 5 years into it, in one letter, she wrote, I wish I'd been keeping a journal all of
Uh,
these years because I think it would be interesting to see how I have grown and
mm,
changed mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And
yeah.
then she said, and I think that my experiences might help other people one day. She
Mm,
knew I kept her letters, so I
yeah.
think she was giving me permission at that point.
Yeah.
But, as I reflect back on it, those letters were some of them were so raw and they were
Mm,
so honest,
mm,
surprisingly funny, a lot of them. But, her letters after that were never as interesting.
mm,
But I think when a person is writing in a time of extreme stress or
sure.
emotion, or, when you're allowing yourself to put these things on paper, um, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
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 And, it was her letters were cathartic for her to write.
Hmm.
And they were inspiring and informative to me. And
Mm,
so,
mm.
that's most people. And she did have a journal, and she instructed me to burn the journal,
Oh, yeah.
which I did. And that was hard for me to do.
Mm,
And I thought, well, I've got her letters. She told me in the letters what she wanted me to know.
yeah. Yeah.
And so I burned the journal because I thought, there might be things that are I just did it out of respect, and I still like, oh, I wonder what she said.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So, yeah, so
Yeah,
I think that's really, really powerful and good
yeah,
advice.
yeah. I think so too. We're talking about different strategies
Mm-hmm,
for dealing with normal
mm-hmm,
human emotions
mm-hmm,
and events that hit us in our lives.
mm-hmm.
And they're hard. They're very hard. We all get we all get hit with these um, things, big and small, and
Right.
um, there's a lot of parallels to from one person to another as to how we deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is allowing those emotions, whatever they are, to flow through us. And not have that, not have that controlling influence um, over time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, yeah.
This has not taken the direction I expected it to,
Mhm.
and I think it's just brilliant, and very helpful. I know that some of my friends have gotten pets.
Mhm.
And for them, it's been helpful to have another living
Yeah,
being in the
yeah,
house and a living being, creature to
yeah.
speak to talk to share their thoughts with. Um, that's probably not what I would do, but I
Mhm.
think it can be very helpful to people. One friend said to another friend who just lost her spouse, if somebody calls and invites you to dinner, go. And, because people will stop inviting you if you don't go. And if
Mhm.
you start crying in the middle of dinner and you have to leave, then leave. But,
Mhm.
accept invitations, get out, don't become a hermit.
Yeah,
So that was her advice.
good point.
So I think we'll wrap this here because I
Sure.
really like the idea of journaling, of filling this quiet space with the opportunity to reflect and write. And I think it can restore a person's identity. It can
Yeah,
start that process. And we'll talk about that maybe in the next session. How do you find this new identity? And I think it might be with this talk of transition, accepting where you've been
yeah,
and making peace with that, and then figuring out what's next.
yeah.
So let's have that as our next topic. What do you think?
That sounds good. We get both feet on the ground and we start to enter the new
Yeah.
race. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's great.
Okay.
Dr. Joseph Casciani, thank you so much for being here. Again, his podcast is Living to 100, fascinating guests and topics. And we will be back in this session shortly. So we'll see you again soon.
Sounds great. Many thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome. Thank you.